Hello, everyone, and welcome to our new Skill Boost session devoted to media interview practice for LGBTI activists. My name is Svetlana Zakharova, and I work with ILGA-Europe. I'm coordinating strategic communications program, and it's a program that was launched last year, and entails different learning and funding opportunities, and learning opportunities such as this particular Skills Boost. This skill boost is heavily based on the materials we prepared for another session, the one we organized last year at the ILGA-Europe conference in Sofia. And we got quite a lot of very positive feedback, so we decided to adopt those materials and organize this session, also because the topic is very, very interesting for many people, as we know. This session is going to be recorded and published afterwards. So if you have any security concerns, please keep your camera turned off or change your name. Otherwise, we are very happy to see your faces. It's always very nice. In the end of the session, there will be time for questions and answers. If you have any questions, you can put it in the chat box or send it to me directly, and I will make sure that there will be no questions missed by the end, and my colleague Mehmet will help me with that. And also after this session, you will receive the recording, the presentation, all the materials, and also an exercise, so don't worry about that. Can we go to the next slide, please? So what's going to happen today? Today, we will talk mostly about the strategies and messaging. We will talk about actually even the question how interview can help you with your work, or even if you need to accept interview request at all. We will talk about some tips for TV and radio interviews. And as I said, you will get an assignment. Of course, it's not mandatory. You don't have to do it. But the next session will take place on September 26th. And during this session, there will be a space for individual practice and group feedback and reflection. So if you would like to participate in this very practical part, make sure to send us assignment. It will be very short. And also, of course, the number of spaces is limited. So if you're interested in that, don't postpone it too much. Can we move? So yes, basically today we are going to talk about interviews and tips from the point of view of interviewee, not press officer. So if you're interested in such topics, how to get this interview, I would like to invite you to pay attention to our other skills boost, and specifically the one on media relations. Also, you can see all the links in the presentation. And yes, as I said earlier, this workshop, this session was prepared by many people, but basically by 6 people. And not all of us are here today or participating or delivering anything, but we wanted to make sure that we credited everyone who participated. So in the creation of this session participated Alla Chikinda and Luka Dudic. And also here with us, Mehmet Akin. Mehmet, could you wave to people to locate yourself? Yes, thank you. Also with us today, Shobok Kono, our permanent consultant on strategic communications. Sho is working with ILGA-Europe for many years already, and his feedback and his sessions are very valuable and interesting. And also with me today, Anna Munoz, my colleague from our communications team. And yes, we hope you will enjoy this session. When we were thinking about this session, we were thinking about basically anxieties different people have while they're thinking about broadcast interview with TV and radio. And we decided to start with sharing stories from our practice, because all people who participated in the creation of this workshop have quite a lot of practice with giving interview or being behind the camera and so on. And when I was thinking about my own experience, I think the most embarrassing moment for me was when I was invited for an interview in Russia on TV, and I went and I had all the equipment on, but then I was waiting for my turn. And of course I was told that since the moment all the equipment is on me, everything I'm saying or doing is heard by a huge team of people. But I was waiting for quite a long time, and then I was a bit anxious, and I went to the bathroom, and I remembered what I was told and what happened only when I was washing my hands. It was very embarrassing, but interview still went quite well. For me, it was a very important learning I will never forget it. And here I think I would like to pass to Sho.
Yeah, thanks, Svetlana. I don't think I could top that story. My media mess up was I mean, I've trained hundreds of activists for their interviews, but when I had to go behind the microphone myself for a radio interview, a BBC London radio interview, I was very confident, but then I very confidently changed my topic in the middle of an answer that I had thought about, and I tried to sort of like talk about try to lots of credit lots of other people who were involved in the initiative. And as I started to say it, I realized I completely forgotten their names and, right in the middle of the sentence, and I just kind of froze there. Luckily, it was radio, not TV, and the presenter just looked at me like, you decided to give that answer. What, you didn't even know the names of the person that you wanted to credit, and just looked at me like I was a fraud. So that was one of my embarrassing media interview moments. Anna, do you want to share yours?
So what I want to share today, it's not an anecdote, but more of a recurrent issue, which is, I mean, I sometimes take interviews. Interview requests we receive when they are in Spanish, because it's my native language, and no matter how much I prepare, I always end up looking to the top left corner of the screen, doing a lot of and just as Sho said, when I get very nervous, I have also this tendency of completely changing to another topic. Or if I'm trying to handle my nerves, you can then clearly see that I've been just reading key points, and so if I get another question, I will also like simply freeze. But look into the top corner as if there's a bird distracting me. That's the usual one.
Thank you for sharing, Sho. Can we go to the next slide? Because actually, I think that now it's time to ask about your big anxieties. There should be a slide about our big anxieties. Aha, here it is. Yes, there is a text right behind of that. So basically, we managed to identify 4 big anxieties quite many people face before the interviews. So now we are going to ask you, what do you think? Now I'm starting the poll, and you can choose one of those, or you can think about something else. So tell us, what is your big anxiety before interview? What we found ourselves is, I'm unsure if I should accept a media interview request or not, nervous what to do physically with my hands, if my clothes are good, and how I'm sitting, and where are my feet, and all of that, worried the interviewer is going to ask stupid questions, or stressed that what I want to say will actually not come out right. Thank you for responding. I think now I can see that all of them are actually quite popular and widespread. And those of you who mentioned another big anxiety, maybe some of you would like to turn on your microphone and to name them? No.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Sorry, I cannot turn up my camera because I have some cold and I don't want to show people my sick face. But yeah, another big anxiety of me is to say something that I really want to say, but this will be used as like a weapon by my own government to attack me, accuse me, and like put me on like their enemy list. So I just worried of taking interviews in overall because of my own safety.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing. Well, that's actually, I don't think that we will be able to address This topic at today's session also, I think it's not that much of an anxiety, but rather a security issue and question. And yes, I'm very sorry that you're facing this, but I think it's something different and something bigger. But thank you for sharing. And we have the winner. I think most people believe that, like, stressed about that what they want to say will not come out right. I think it's a quite relevant one. Thank you for participating. Now we know a bit more about who is in the room and what you are afraid of, and we will try to address like these anxieties and some others during our session. And here I would like to pass to Anna. Anna, would you like to step in?
Thanks, Svetlana. And it's my pleasure to do this. So I'm going to start this section of strategy and messaging, and then I will pass it on to Sho. And I'm going to start to try to reply to the question, why should you take or not take a media interview? So TV and radio interviews, they are not the only media interaction that you will have, or they are like not the one single communications tool you have. But it is an area where especially LGBTI activists feel especially vulnerable. When they go well, but especially when they go bad, it's very likely that they get very researched. So I'm going to start by the advantages. So the advantages, if we compare them to a written interview or written comments, first of all, I mean, whatever it's the media request, it is going to get some time for you to prepare, different people in the team coming in, discussing, preparing how to frame this, what message to get in, etc., etc. So a lot of resources put in, and many times in a written article, your comment, it's been cut down. It appears at the bottom of the article. It is burdened with many more comments, if it appears at all. So on a TV or a radio interview, you ensure your space. Whoever is listening at that moment or watching at that moment is going to see you, and so you have the full platform to get your message through. And just like in a conversation, you're speaking directly to the hearts and minds of people. Written language, it always requires like some translation, while in a conversation it's always more fluid. So TV and radio, they resemble more to that than a written article. Also, you can say much more with less. Like 1 minute of speaking, you can say up to 140 words, which is a lot, and it's maybe like the only space you are going to have in a written article. So already getting like only 3 minutes, you get to say a lot. And an extra advantage in this in relation to this is that you can also bolster your relations with the media and with journalists and with producers, particularly with producers who are usually like the ones reaching you out and thinking of you whenever there's a topic related to your work. They will better remember you if they've seen you than if they've only have your name in a database. As an LGBTI organization, like, I mean, for a group, for a community where our identities are up to discussion, being in TV or a radio interview, it's an opportunity to speak with our own voices rather than to be talked about. You can also speak to that general public. General public means people. beyond your own activism networks and work. It is an opportunity to debunk some stereotypes and to show people that you share common values. Like when people see that you have a relatable face, that you're just as another person, it is normally like when it's an opportunity to debunk some stereotypes, and also not for that general public. Also, you can also speak to LGBTI people who can see themselves on TV and the radio. Representation is relevant. And finally, you can also, it's also an opportunity for you to put a face to your organization. Again, it's like in the previous example, people will remember you better if they've seen a face than if they only see a name of an organization, which can be a little bit abstract sometimes. So this said, it's not because there are a bunch of advantages. It doesn't mean you have to take every interview. And can we? Yeah, thank you. I would say you can start by asking yourself two very broad questions. One, does this make sense for you, for your work? And second, do you have the resources to take any request in, including preparation time? So I want to share. So here you have. We will also share like the full link from where this list come from, which is a super useful resource. Yeah, but it's not exactly on TV and radio interviews, but we think it will be very helpful for your work. And I also want to share with you a bit what is our own informal checklist whenever we are deciding if to take a TV or radio interview, and also an interview in general. And you can ask this yourself as an organization, but also as a individual level. I think this can help. So first, is the question connected to your scope of work? Is it related to your portfolios and to your geographies? For example, we get many questions about Uganda this last month, and we don't do work related to Uganda, so we direct the journalist to someone else. Are there also security concerns? We may be working on the topic, but we have already decided that this is not something we are going to talk publicly about. Is it a priority? Maybe it's something we are working on, but there are other priorities on the work we're doing. Who is this media? Are they relevant enough? Or on the other side, we've decided that we only want to speak to more independent or indie media. And who is watching? Who are we going to talk with? For example, we sometimes get requests from US media, and we don't work in the US, but for scope of work and for the kind of media, we will take it, even if we understand that most of the audience is going to be based in the US. Also, a very important question: are we best placed to take this request, or is there someone else better placed than us to take it? If it's the case, we will recommend the journalist to reach out to this person or this organization. For us, this happens also, again, related to portfolios, but also related to geographies. For example, many, if not most, of the media requests we get that are only related, that don't have an international angle. So, for example, something that has just happened in Italy, we usually don't take it, but direct the journalists to local organizations. And then it's here is also when the do we have the resources part comes in. So are there people in our team that could not only take the interview but also work in this, because it's usually a team of people working on one single media request. Do this team of people, do they have the time? Are they able to prioritize it? Do we have time to prepare? So is the media giving us time to prepare or not? And what is our relation to this with this media? If they've been helpful, and if they've been if we have had already like some contact in the past, this will play in. If they are not giving us any time, not providing any direction, if we get a bad vibe, we will really like reconsider taking it. So as you see, there's a lot of factors, and of course, yeah, like TV, radio, media in general, it's a lot of pressure, and it's super it's very usual that there's this rush of saying, I really have to take it because it's a bit of a now or never feeling, but it's really not like that. There will be many other opportunities, and it's as much as making time for the interview, it's making space and being able to make a space to prepare it. That's also something to bring in. So yeah, some of the questions you're seeing here on the list, they're like some of the things I've referred to, and that they are in our regular practice. But really go down and check the full list, because it's super useful. So I now wanted to ask if one or two people would like to share with the rest of us any interview you have turned down, or that you would have liked to turn down, and your reasons why. Anyone would like to share? Aha, Alexandra. Okay, I will pass this on to you, Alexandra. I think you have, I'm not sure if you're able to unmute.
Yes, yeah.
Unfortunately, I think some technical issues are here.
Okay, if you can't unmute, Alexandra, maybe, maybe if you would like to share a bit in writing, and we can read it out loud, if you would like. Or in the meantime, or as Alexandra maybe is typing, is there someone else who would like to share any experiences? Okay, Sinead.
I'm happy to share some of the experiences of interviews that we've turned down. So I work and belong to the National LGBT Youth Organisation in Ireland, and in the past year we've actually changed our tactics in terms of responding to the media, because we found last summer there was a lot of transphobic and gender critical journalists getting in touch with us, and it was taking up all of our time basically as an organization, which is, I suppose, what some of those people want to happen, is to kind of distract you from fulfilling your strategic objectives. So last summer, not this summer, but the year before, we spent the whole summer like frantically on a Sunday morning. I'd be going to check the papers and then typing up a statement, and it was very stressful on the well-being of our team and belong to, but it was taking up a lot of our time, and we were doing a lot of firefighting. And this was all around gender identity and trans topics. So we've taken a very different approach this year, and now we're focusing instead on doing proactive media, so that we're kind of trying to set the agenda, and we're just not responding, and not like the title of this saying, you don't owe them an interview. The only challenge of that is that it is leaving a void then for some less experienced voices. There's always someone who's going to do the interview. So it's a little bit of a tricky balance, because we might say no, even though we might have a little bit more expertise and just research and evidence from our work than someone else who might do it. But that's working out quite well for us so far. And it's actually helping, I suppose, reduce the amount of negative media coverage that we've seen compared to from this summer compared to last summer.
Actually, like the divide and rule by Neon, I think it has like some examples of like why, like the situation you're describing, when at some point it feels like counterproductive, like just to be like fueling that machine. And I think also the case you're sharing, it shows like how you really have to also to balance in the resources. It's not only about like what is happening out there, it's also how your resources there and your energy is limited, and is joining every single conversation the best way of using them. Although of course, I mean, in an ideal world maybe it's something you would consider, but that has to come in the decision making. I think we have some time for someone else to share, so I will also ask you to unmute.
Thank you. So hi everyone, I'm Rupsime Ripa from Pink Armenia. So we are also an LGBTQ plus organization, human rights defender organization operating in Armenia. I can tell you about our experience happened last year. Unfortunately, we had a case of suicide of two young gay men, and after that incident we were getting a lot of offers from national TV as well to participate in a program when they were going to debate on the issue. And as we get to know about the program and what the TV show it is, it was people, a lot of some experts were coming together and discussing the issue of how homosexuality can affect the mental health of people, young persons. And it was first of all, we were very surprised to get the offer to be presented in a national TV, because it never happened with us before. And we were considering how we can approach this, and does it make sense to take part, because it was very important for us to not be silent about the issue of homophobia and how it can affect young lives. But then when we discovered how the program is communicating this kind of issues and what they were offering, and the format of debate was very offensive for us. So we turned down the offer, and of course we were very again concerned about how the media is approaching the issue. And then we learned that they've invited two they call themselves an experts, one's a psychologist and one legal expert who mostly identifies as a anti-gender representative who wants to fight for national values. And these two people were discussing how homosexuality can harm people, and we were very surprised that the program, first of all, they've decided to make such an interview or discussion, and then they aired that. And after that, what we see, we again, we felt that our decision to turn down the interview was right, because we couldn't have any saying in this environment when with the experts who are representing very anti-gender and homophobic approaches are ones who are taking the space. And we also learned that the person who was doing the interview, they were also very homophobic, and they wouldn't anyhow give us the opportunity and space to voice our concerns. So this was one of the examples why we sometimes really deep down we do investigate who is asking to do the interview or to do some kind of to take part in a TV program.
Thanks for that. And yeah, indeed, it's an example of a very key part that comes in the decision making on when you're asking yourself, yes, no, do I go to this interview, which is who is hosting and who is holding the space of that interview, and doing a little bit of background check. And in the end, it's also keeping in mind you're taking this interview to get your message through. So it's asking yourself, not only do I take or do I don't take the interview, but also will I have the opportunity to get my message through? And if it's going to be not a welcoming environment, and not an environment that is going to allow for a conversation, then yeah, why taking it? It's just going to source up to take up your resources. That's something. I mean, we try to, when it's for written media, we try to also get like the questions in advance. For TV, radio, it's a bit different, because as I said, well, the fact that it is a conversation, it also allows for more spontaneity. But of course, asking like who else is going to be there, not only as security check, but also to understand where what kind of conversation are we going to have, and will I have the opportunity to get my my message through, which is in the end what should be the objective. And just one last thing, in the end, like if like your more general goal is to get a message through, then maybe sometimes just going to one anecdotal interview, it's maybe not the way through. There can be like other strategies that are more in the long term on how to influence media that we cannot address them in this session, but they're out there, exist. Okay, so some people are also sharing some experiences in the chat. Thanks, Alexandra, who passed the interview to someone who was very placed. Marin Okay, so understand. Okay, so the general media environment in the UK is not very welcoming right now. And Flo, okay, so you usually get requests on, so when LGBTI people are being victims of something, which is also something that the media regularly looks a lot at. And yeah, I know whenever there's progressive laws, also better news that gets less shared, which is also something that happens across all international media. And Maria, we turned out an interview about alleged homosexual relationship. Okay, so we didn't have enough information about the topic, so declined. So you did some assessment of whether if you were well placed also to take this interview or not. Commenting on the issue would have been very damaging to the organization, as the incident was not at all related to the LGBTIQ plus community. It seemed urgent at the time and a good opportunity. Yeah, I think this is a very good example. All media requests they seem very urgent, but then yeah, maybe you're not well placed, and then there could be side consequences. So yeah, so Sho, it's also commenting. Maybe Sho, do you want to comment? So it's also like an opportunity to pass the rest of the session for you to continue.
Cool. Yeah, thanks Anna, and really interesting. Thanks everyone for sharing your close escapes or your regrets or your things that you turned down. So the most important part of your media interview is not what you wear or what you say, or what you do with your hands, but what you say. And we know that it's interesting to see how many of you voted for that kind of the anxiety of what you want to say not coming out right as one of your biggest anxieties. And so we generally advise that the easiest way to be confident in your interview is to be prepared with what your message is and have some kind of confidence that your message is going to be effective with the actual audience that you want to reach. We're not going to go super deep into messaging, framing, narratives, that kind of topic, because it's a huge topic. We've done quite a few sessions on it and there are resources already available on it. But we just sort of like highlight some of the resources that we think are the tips that are out there that we think are maybe useful to use as a template for your messages that you're preparing for your interview practice. So the first one I say is obviously the ILGA-Europe and PIRC Framing Equality Toolkit. I think particularly from it, if I was going to really boil it down to just 5 tips, then I said there's 4 things they say to do and 1 thing to not, which is speak to people's best self, try and create common ground, talk about change, so talk about what can change, and make it real, so try and make things try and make abstract concepts tangible. And then don't think of an elephant, which is a kind of a classic reference to don't repeat the thing that you don't want your audience to be hearing and thinking about, which is very tempting sometimes when it's a lie or a myth that the opposition or maybe the journalist has just put to you. If it'd be more helpful to you to have a kind of like a step-by-step structure, another example we really like is this the Messaging This Moment handbook, which has a generalized structure which suggests that you lead with shared values, so you say what you all have in common. Actually, I think someone already mentioned something similar to that already. Then you introduce the problem, but you make sure you end with the solutions. So that's a very simplistic 3 steps formula. We can talk about it more in detail as well. And same, you don't owe them an interview, you also don't owe them an answer to the question they asked. And this is the specific, you obviously do need to answer questions, but you don't need to answer exactly what they ask. Politicians do this all the time. It's absolutely our right to do the same. Some of you raised your hands that you were worried, sorry, some of you voted that you're worried that the interviewer is going to ask a hostile or stupid question. If they do ask a question like that, you don't owe them an answer directly to that question. You do not get marks for being on topic. It's not a school classroom. What matters is that you say what you want to say. So preparing for ways to respond to these questions and come back, there's a couple of easy templates that you might want to use to prepare for them. So one is kind of, you might have heard it called pivoting, or ABC, so acknowledge, bridge, and communicate. And the other is the truth sandwich. So if you are going to address some kind of lie or misinformation, that you sandwich it between truth, although actually in a sandwich you normally, anyway, the sandwich isn't the greatest metaphor, I think. So what does acknowledge, bridge, communicate look like? It will normally be some version of like acknowledging what the fear or the emotion or the valid kind of what is valid behind the lie, rather than repeating it. But so there's some examples here. I understand why people might be worried about that, but you bridge away, so you start to bridge away to what you want to say. So important to keep in mind what the evidence really tells us, or the bigger issue underneath this all is, and then you move on to communicate what your proactive message is. So the key thing that insert group here, parents, really want to know is, or to put it into perspective, you say your message. The alternative, like, kind of framework or steps for doing this is, really importantly with the truth sandwich and techniques like this, is that you refute the liar, you don't repeat the lie. And to explain what I mean by that, so you might, if you do feel like strategically you do need to address a lie head on, I don't think it's always good advice to people to say just ignore myths and just ignore lies. I think sometimes you do have to address them as part of your strategy. You talk about the truth, you note the attempt by the opposition or by the myth to distract attention. You note that there is a myth, you note that there is a lie, but you don't repeat it. You then get back to your real issues, you get back to what your message is. And if you want more detail, a slightly more detailed template for that is to start with a value, so a shared value, similarly to the proactive 3-step template mentioned before. Then you have a villain, so you name who is responsible for sharing the lie or the misinformation or the problem that you're talking about, and you highlight how they are deliberately trying to divide us or scapegoat us. And you end with the vision, so what it is that you're trying to get towards, and that there's a realistic prospect of getting there. So it's not something abstract and a fairy tale, it's something that we could easily achieve. So just to sort of boil that down to super simplistic yes and do and don't just ignore it, because most of the time they still hear the other side. Strategically, it might be right for your organization to not respond on every issue, but overall, simply ignoring a lie isn't always the best advice I would give, because the other side's normally much more powerful in being able to spread their message. Don't fact check in a way that just repeats the lie and therefore reinforces it. But you might choose to pivot, so acknowledge, bridge, or communicate away from it, or you might choose to take the lie head on, but in that case you refute the lie rather than repeat the lie. Sorry, refute the liar rather than repeat the lie, with something like the format of a truth sandwich or the value, villain, vision steps. Okay, so that's enough on messaging. Obviously, that's a huge topic, and that's actually probably a much bigger topic. But you came here today because you wanted some quite specific technical stuff about media interviews, and specifically broadcast media interviews. So we're going to just check we're on time. Yeah, we're going to be talking about a very specific, time-limited, and frankly weird scenario here. Media interviews, TV interviews are weird. We're going to be talking about mainstream media TV interviews, but hopefully most of these tips will also apply to other kinds of media or public speaking situations even. So I'll try and point those out as we go. I'm going to show you a bunch of clips of activists and a couple of other clips of real life TV interviews, and we're going to play a little game of bingo. Now this is deliberately going to be an almost impossible game for most of you, because not only is it English vocab, English jargon that we're going to be working with, but it's also English like TV insider jargon that like producers use amongst themselves. So don't get annoyed at me that there's no way you can win at this quiz. That's the point. These are sort of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 terms that can like internal industry, in case anyone can't read the screen. Donut, down the line, studio guest, Aston, noddy, vox pop, disco, and package. Most of you won't know most of these terms. If you do, I'm impressed, or you're cheating because you actually have worked in TV. So I'm going to play you a video of a TV interview, and I want you to type into the Zoom chat as quickly as you can when you think you see one of these things happen in the TV clip. Is that clear? Okay. It's deliberately unfair, and it's also testing your Zoom typing skills, but it's fun just to get us to pay attention to it. Also, this first clip is going to be in Turkish, so you don't have to worry about, unless you're a Turkish speaker, you don't have to worry about what the content of what they're saying is. Just pay attention to what's actually happening in this interview. Okay, hopefully you should hear sound, although as I said, it's in Turkish, so it shouldn't matter too much if the sound quality isn't great. I'm going to play this clip, and as it's playing, try and be the first to like type if you see one of these TV kind of elements happening in the left-hand side.
Sevgili Webiz TV izleyenleri, Webiz Gençlik Programı'ndan hepinize merhaba. Oldukça yoğun, hareketli bir hafta geçirdik. Özellikle üniversiteler, akademisyenler, öğrenciler açısından. Geçen hafta programımızda konuşmuştuk. Yaşanan son KHK ihraçlarının ardından birçok üniversitede, birçok kampüste, birçok alanda tepkiler, protestolar, eylemler gerçekleşti ve gerçekleşmeye devam ediyor. Bugün yine en son Bilgi Üniversitesi'nde ve Marmara Üniversitesi'nde öğrenciler hocama dokunma demeye devam ediyorlardı. Ve Türkiye bir yandan da baktığımızda başkanlık sistemini, OHAL'i, referandumu konuşmaya, tartışmaya devam ediyor. Biz de bugün daha önce programlarımızda yaptığımız gibi farklı gençlik kesimlerinin referanduma dair ne düşündüğünü, OHAL Türkiye'sine dair ne düşündüğünü konuşmaya, tartışmaya devam edeceğiz. Bugün LGBTI gençlerin OHAL Türkiye'sinde yaşadığı.
Okay, great. Three people have typed in. Katrin said package. Do you want to quickly unmute yourself and say why you thought package, Katrin?
I have no idea what it means. I just felt that the
you just try to guess.
No, but like the image I had that the presenter talked and packaged whatever the guest might be saying afterwards,
okay,
already from the start.
That's a good guess, but it's wrong. Okay, Taha said noddy. Do you want to say why you thought it might be noddy?
I don't know. I just guessed because he was writing. So I said maybe it's noddy. I don't know.
That's okay. It wasn't actually a noddy, but you will see a noddy later. And Maria Fontanelle, do you want to say why you thought it was a studio guest?
Hi, morning. The gentleman looked like he was waiting for a question. It seemed that he was just there waiting for the person to give their explanation, and then he would be interviewed.
You are correct. It is a studio guest. Was it any others? No, I don't think there was an Aston in there. So yes, yeah, absolutely correct. Studio guest for the reason that you said, but also just more simply because Mehmet here, thank you for submitting this clip, Mehmet, is a guest in the studio. You are physically there in the studio. I see someone else also guessed that correctly as well, Christina, well done. So yes, it's a studio guest. What's the takeaway here? What's the lesson from this? The main thing I'd say is you are a guest in a studio, which is kind of like a theater stage, because TV is theater. People are doing it deliberately to a fourth wall that they can't see, but we are on the other side as the audience of it. And the reason why TV being theatre matters to us is that there's all sorts of weird things going on here that are not normal for everyday human interaction. For one thing, the presenter, did you see the newsreader there? He's occasionally doing a monologue directly to the camera. In real life, people don't turn and then start talking to the audience who are listening to them, and rather than talking to the person who are next to them. They are putting on a completely pretend conversation for the benefit of the audience. Why does that matter? That is pretend because a lot of the time they're not even really listening to you. The newsreader might have a piece in their ear where they're just listening to their producer instead. And their producer is saying like, okay, cool, ask them the second question now. They're talking a bit, what they're saying is a bit boring. Ask them the spicy question, ask them the difficult question. They're also being, all right, we're running out of time now, we need to go to the advert break, so just cut them off. Like they're not really listening to you a lot of the time, which should be liberating to you, because you should not have to worry about convincing them, the journalist. You're not playing by the rules of real life conversation. You are having a fake conversation for the benefit of the person who's eavesdropping on your conversation. And so if you've ever been at high school and you've maybe had a fake conversation with one of your friends to try and impress someone who you thought might be eavesdropping, this is exactly the kind of vibe you should be going for. It's entirely for the benefit of the audience. You don't get frustrated or offended or get distracted by trying to persuade the actual journalist. And the other thing about being a studio guest is that it can feel intimidating. The nature of being in the studio and of being live like this can scare people. But I would actually say it's probably the most control you can ever have on your message and the process around the interview. So for a lot of activists, I would often recommend, even though this is a bit scary and you definitely want someone to come with you, maybe like Svetlana, to make sure you don't take your mic with you to the bathroom, but also just to keep you calm and to make sure you keep your eyes on the prize. A live on location interview is one of the best scenarios, I think, in terms of your ability to control your message getting out there. Okay, next clip. Oh, sorry, yeah, sorry, we had, was there a question? Oh, I thought so. Okay, cool. All right. Again, I'm going to play you a video. This one's in Russian, so again, don't worry about the content of what they're talking about. Just try and pay attention to what's going on the screen. And thank you, everyone, for playing along with this ridiculous, as Alexandra said, this ridiculous game. But thanks for humoring us.
России поговорил наш корреспондент Александр Пугачев.
ЛГБТ-активистка и феминистка Алла Чекинда в оценке причин появления этой законодательной инициативы и ее возможной эффективности с Галкиным согласна и считает, что в случае ее принятия работать она будет скорее психологически.
Те люди, которые сейчас, может быть, более-менее открыты, они совсем закроются. Те, кто еще, допустим, не совершали камин-аут, так этого и не сделают.
Okay, that one's quite short, so I'll give people a second to type in if they've got thoughts. Luke and Maria have put in Vox Pop. Okay, while other people are typing their guess in, Luke Ray, do you want to say why you thought it was Vox Pop?
Yeah, if I've got my terminology correct, it's the Vox Pop is the brief public interventions. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so actually, yes. Well, I'm going to say wrong. This for William, but actually, no. That's a really good reason for it. You've it's a good answer actually. Yeah. We'll show you a classic Vox Pop in one of the later clips, and you'll see the slight difference between them and this one. But that's good reasoning. That's good thinking. Maria also said Vox Pop. Alexandra said package. Do you want to explain why you think it was a package? If your unmute is working now, Alexandra.
I mean, I don't know.
Yes, we can hear you.
I thought because they were introducing them as like, but obviously I'm wrong.
No, you're right. No, carry on. Because they were introducing them and
introducing. So here is the info package about this person who is talking. Maybe something like that. I don't know.
Yes, you're right for a slightly wrong reason, but yes, you're right. It is a package. Well done. Oh, sorry, I should have waited to see whether anyone else had any other answers. But it's a package, and there's also an Aston. So the reason that it's a package is that just as you said, the presenter introduced this person. I'll play it again with the sound off. So yeah, so the presenter starts introducing it, and then we cut to a pre-recorded package. So they've filmed this beforehand, and then they've edited it, and so that's why it's called a package. Because obviously they might have spent a whole day filming this interview and going around the park and filming the shots of her sitting down at the bench and things like that. But they've edited down into only like 2 minutes to show. So that's the main thing. It's pre-recorded, it's been edited. And the takeaway for us is that a package is the biggest variety in terms of different things that could happen in a media interview appearance for you. And they're also why they're kind of like the biggest nightmare for a press officer. Or maybe Anna won't agree, but because when it's not live, you lose a lot of the control over what goes into the final thing that goes on TV, and the process that is outside of the interview becomes more important. And so by that process, I mean like the trying to get the interview appearance in the first place, talking to the journalists originally, whether you proactively reached to them or whether they reached out to you. Trying to, as Anna said, that you should always do is trying to find out in advance what the journalist is going to ask, talking to the producer. And then also like making sure that the facts that they're including in the package are right, because they're going to say things about you. So I think the takeaway for us in terms of what we should do about this when we know is, first of all, to make sure you know whether you are in a package rather than in a live interview. That's a key thing that sometimes goes wrong. And also to have a buddy, whether that is a colleague who is actually fulfilling a communications or press officer role, or if you don't have that luxury, if it's just a friend who is going along to these kinds of media interview opportunities with you, and so that you can stay focused on what you're actually going to say to camera in response to the questions of the journalist, but your buddy is looking out for all the things like, what are they filming? Are they filming my friend in a sort of like a friendly location, or are they trying to like shoot them in really harsh lighting and, you know, up against the wall like they're a convict or something like that? So you've got your friend who's doing the job of kind of like a press officer, looking out for all the things that are going on and that might go into the package, so that you can concentrate on what you're saying. And then Aston, I don't think anyone guessed an Aston yet, did they? Oh no, but let's wait. I think there's more Astons that will come up. So in the later clips, so I'll keep moving, and we'll see whether anyone spots an Aston. Okay, next clip. This one's in English, but still try to ignore what Svetlana is actually saying, and just focus on what's happening in the clip, and type in if you guess.
My name is Maxim Ersavi, and we're gathering here for a very kind of unique moment, even for this region. In one room, we gathered LGBTI activists for the whole region of Eastern Europe, and this is the first kind of a TV interview where we managed to talk about these issues in general, pan-regionally. So I'm going to start with asking questions about your own countries, but in kind of regional perspective. And I think start with Svetlana. I'm talking about Russia as the biggest country in region, as a bigger troublemaker, because we know that basically all our problems inside smaller countries kind of started out with this anti-gay propaganda law in Russia and Russian attempts to push it as foreign policy. I talked to you over a year ago, and we talked about rising violence in Ukraine, comparing to Russia. And then you said to me, and it's, by the way, following ILGA-Europe index, that Russia went up a couple of positions. You said that the situation got a bit even better after the war in Ukraine started. Is it still the trend?
Well, I would say that it's really complicated, because on the one hand, we have really more people who support us. And on the other hand, we have a lot of problems with legislation. We have this so-called propaganda law, we have this foreign agent law, and all these things. And of course, the level of homophobia and level of violence is increasing constantly.
Okay, I see we've got guesses from Alexandra and Maria. If there's any guesses from people who haven't had a guess yet, it'd be cool to hear from you. So I'll just quickly say, no, it's not a down the line and it's not a donut, but I will make sure that we explain what those are soon. Anyone else got any guesses? Svetlana is doing a disclaimer. This is from 2015. Hripsame, and both Alexandra said disco, but Hripsame was on my screen the first. So do you want to say why you guessed that, Hripsame?
My guess just really simple, that there are a lot of people sitting there. So just because of that.
Great, yes. And so it's literally disco is not like disco ball and disco music, but disco is just short for discussion. It's just one of those like annoying jargon things that TV people use to make themselves seem clever. Yes, it is a disco because it's also a studio guest, but I guess we've already seen that because they are live in a studio. And it's a disco because there are other people in this discussion. And so the main takeaway for us should be to think, well, you might not always be in a studio where there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guests as well as a TV presenter. But it's the thing you should always be thinking about: how you're going to deal with the other people who are in the discussion with you in the media interview. So that's finding out whether that is the case in the first place. So many times I've seen people say, oh, I turned up and there was suddenly 2 other people in the discussion with me. I thought it was a one-on-one interview. I didn't realize that I was going to have to relate to other people who are there. So that's the most practical tip. But also think about the fact that TV is theater again. And so thinking about what character has the journalist or the producers cast you as in this discussion, because they will have thought about why you and the other guests are there, and they in their head will have a very simplified, simplistic kind of character casting in their head that you are the X. So you are the LGBTI activist, but they might be thinking you're the one there to be the radical voice so that we've got someone else who's the establishment voice. Or they might be thinking you're there to be the angry person who is against this thing that's come up. So you need to be thinking about how have they cast you, which is important for getting the media interview in the first place, but it's also important for being prepared yourself about how you're going to relate to what their expectations are. And was thinking about who are the other guests, what are they going to be trying to do, who are their audience in this, and if you think or suspect that they might be hostile, or at least that they might repeat misinformation and myths, then you need to be thinking about slightly different versions of your acknowledge, bridge, communicate, or truth sandwich, because you'll be dealing with people who are kind of like next to you as fellow guests, as opposed to the journalists coming directly at you. So those are the things you need to think about if you know you're going to go into a discussion with other guests in your interview appearance. Again, we're going to see more Astons, so I won't spoil that one yet. But yeah, well done, Hripsame, and also I think Alexandra got that as well. Okay, this next clip, this is obviously not one from our team, but this is from a US interview.
What statements are you referring to?
The statements by the Vice President, Biden, saying, for instance, that I was a high-tech terrorist. Sarah Palin calling to our organization to be dealt with like the Taliban and be hunted down. There's calls either for my assassination or the assassination of my staff, or for us to be kidnapped and renditioned.
Any guesses? Any guesses at all? I know. It's a bit of an unfair quiz. But... Someone can have a go. No, absolutely no one wants to have a guess. Go on, Alexandra. Thank you. You're still muted.
Maybe Esther?
No. Oh,
Okay.
Christina's guessed Noddy. Why Noddy, Christina? I don't. Well, sorry. Maybe it's not a guess. Maybe you know.
Because I don't know, it doesn't seem that the interviewer is he's just going along. I don't know, he's just nodding there.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's literally it. It's because
Or what
let me
statements?
turn off the sound. Every now and then, so this is Julian Assange, and every now and then you see a clip of the of the interviewer just like, actually he's not even nodding, right? He's just blinking. But so they just quickly cut to the interviewer just looking at Julian Assange. And Flo also thought noddy. Yeah, so the reason it's a noddy, maybe I can just play this again so that you can sort of keep seeing it, is because the interviewer, should I just check that it was noddy and I didn't say there was any other things in it? Yeah, so the interviewer is sat there interviewing the guest, in this case Julian Assange, and we're mainly seeing the clips of Julian Assange, but every now and then we'll cut and we'll see the interviewer. And it's called a noddy because often they just film a short clip where the interviewer is just going like, uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. And the reason they use it is because they're using that clip to play over cuts in the audio of Assange's answers. So whenever they're cutting one of your answers, and obviously it would sound really weird if they just cut it straight, because I'd be in the middle of an answer and then suddenly my head would be moved and I'd be like this and I'd be saying something different. To cover up that cut in the edit, they're playing like just a second of the interviewer looking to make it look like more natural. And I mean, these are really funny because if it's a low budget, or actually back in the days it used to be quite common, also with high budget broadcasters, they would literally film the whole interview just from this angle of me here. And then once the interviewee had left, the interviewer, they would move the camera angle and just aim it at the interviewer. And the interviewer would sit in an empty room without anyone there and would just be going like this. Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. And so they would just film footage of them nodding, listening to an empty chair, just so they could use it to cover up the edit. Now, it's funny, but the reason why that matters for you is because this is another reason, like with packages, why you need to be careful about editing. And this isn't even the case with like hostile journalists, right? So yes, hopefully you would be able to have some previous intelligence that previous like info that a journalist is so hostile that they would deliberately edit you in a malicious way. But most of the time, when things go wrong with activists in interviews that are pre-recorded and that are covered up in this way, it's not because the journalist is deliberately trying to make you look bad. It's because you haven't given the journalist simple, short, coherent clips, what they call sound bites, or you've given them so many different details. You've given them such long answers that are so, and you say your answers again, and you give a slightly different answer each time. That you have forced them to patch something together in a rush, because they're like, I need to fit this into my 2-minute package, so I can't have the fact you give me 3 different 2-minute answers. I'm going to need to find some way to cut and slice up 3 30-second answers from you. And if you haven't given them your best answer, your preferred answer in a short, concise, and powerful way, you're forcing them to patch something together from what they can get, and that might potentially misrepresent you, or it might not be your strongest answer. So is another reason why, especially in pre-recorded interviews, you should be preparing what are your short, powerful answers. And the luxury with pre-recorded interviews, as compared to live, is that you can, in the middle of an answer, say, that went wrong, can we start again? So that's absolutely your right. You don't have to kind of like just think on your feet and try and style it out like you would in a live interview. You are absolutely within your right to as you're saying something, realize, oh, I'm giving a rubbish answer that could be edited quite badly. You can deliberately ruin it, and just go like, or something like that, and say, sorry, can you ask that question again? That's absolutely, you're right, and it might actually be quite a smart thing to do to make sure they don't use that footage in the edit. Okay, I think we've just got one last one. Okay, so last one, you might be able to. I mean, there's a limited number of ones that are left now.
Decided to. In Hungary, the government has decided to add a disclaimer to a book that's been launched by a sexual minority rights publisher. The disclaimer states that the fairy tale conveys values that are different from the original, traditional, familial values of Hungary. Prime Minister Viktor Orban, whose right-wing Fidesz party has adopted an increasingly hostile rhetoric and policies towards LGBT groups, called the book homosexual propaganda. Well, Luca Dudic is the communications officer at the Hatter Society, a non-governmental LGBTIQ organisation. She joins me now from the capital, Budapest. Thank you very much for speaking to us. Now, this book, part of the controversy that's been caused by the government is that it's a story about a prince who marries another prince, as well as a whole load of other more forward-thinking liberal ideas. What action are you taking against the government?
So our issue with the whole ruling is that you know, it's completely discriminatory and unconstitutional, because to just slam a book that depicts groups and characters from marginalized social groups is just completely discriminatory. So our issue is that you can't just say that consumers need to be warned that a book is depicting patterns of behavior deviating from traditional gender roles, as the ruling says, because that is, you know, just not something that a democracy can do.
Any guesses? Okay, maybe I've made this game not very fun. Not that many options left. No guesses? Okay, I'll just finish it off then. So this was down the line, and it was also an Aston, but there was a few Astons in the previous ones. So it's down the line because
in Hungary.
Yeah, I'll just show you. It's down the line because yeah, Luca is talking to us down the line from Hungary. She's on I can't remember if it was Zoom, or I think maybe Luca said it was like through a special software from the media company. Maybe it was from the channel, or maybe it was Skype. But either way, it's doing something down the line, as in like it used to be down the phone line for radio interviews. So it's a remote interview. The main takeaway is that you should know what you're getting into, that you're getting into a remote interview, and that you are actually, in this case, going to be looking directly into the camera, because then you are going to then be in the whole nother theater of the stage of the TV interview, talking to a journalist. So it's a quite artificial scenario where you need to be prepared for the fact you're going to be in your own house, probably, doing a remote interview. And increasingly, this is the way that interviews are done since COVID, even when there haven't been lockdowns. And you also need to do things like practice looking into the camera. It's quite hard to do. I know some people who have even started putting like little googly eyes on their webcam to trick you into making eye contact with the camera itself, rather than doing what is natural, which is to look at the faces of the people on the Zoom call. So you might even want to disable the face function if you are doing it via Zoom or video conferencing software. But the main thing to think about is just like that it will just be a different kind of dynamic, the fact that you won't be in the studio physically with them, and there'll always be that little bit of a delay, which is sometimes difficult and unnatural, but actually also means that you've got a bit of extra room if you need to pause to think about your answer. So it also can be a bit helpful, that kind of like the satellite delay that you get with down the line interviews. And then the Aston, I'll just show you, is, where is it? Yeah, so the Aston is this thing that's come up on screen now. So the thing that says Lisa's name and job title and organization. That's literally what it's called. The Aston is like, it used to be the name of the tape that would go across the screen. The main takeaway with that is you want it to be correct, right? So this is another thing about having a buddy with you or having a colleague who's thinking about all of these things that are outside the actual interview and looking at that process for you, making sure your name's spelt right. And also more on message, making sure that you're described in the way that you want. Otherwise, you might just be described as a random LGBTI activist rather than from your organization or the way you want to be described. Remember always thinking about that in this theatre play, how is the journalist, how is the producer casting you? Okay, all right. I hope that was a fun way of looking through all these clips, but I also appreciate it was a completely unfair quiz, but don't worry, your marks have not been recorded. So, as Svetlana said at the beginning, now it's your turn. We want you to use these tips to actually prepare for a practice interview to prepare for the real life interviews. So we're going to give you a real life scenario. Thanks Milena and Anya to make me not feel so nervous about having done a bingo game for half the workshop. So we're going to give you this scenario that if you would like to practice for the follow-up session, it'd be great. But even if not, hopefully it just helps you sort of like organize your reflections and learnings and thinking from this session. So the scenario it's the run-up to an election. We've always got to try and make this generic enough that it can apply to almost all of you. So it's the run-up to election. So maybe that's a national election. We know quite a few who have national elections in the next year, or maybe it's the EU parliamentary elections next summer. Whichever's most relevant to you, you choose that as your scenario. And well, this will be the case for all of you. LGBTI rights have once again become a focus or a topic of debate in the election. You have been approached by France 24. So if anyone doesn't know France 24, that was the clip, that's the sort of screen grab we've shown with also another interview with Lutza. It's an international TV station, so it's English language. That's our excuse for doing the session in English. If you've ever watched BBC News or CNN, it's a little bit like that because it's kind of like rolling all day and all week. Maybe it's a bit more culture and debate focused than BBC News or CNN, but roughly, if you've got in your head what an international news station is like, it's like that. And it's for a 3 or 4 minute live interview down the line, which is part of a series that they're doing about different topics at stake in the elections. So they're doing LGBTI rights now, but they do migration tomorrow. They do housing the day afterwards. When your colleague or buddy spoke to the producer, you realized they didn't know that much about you. They were just inviting you on because they wanted to have someone give the LGBTI perspective. As far as you know, they're not going to interview the opposition in the same live segment as you are in, but they might ask you to respond to the opposition or respond to the opposition. So that's all you've been able to find out from the producer about this scenario. So what I want you to prepare, whether you are going to turn up on the 26th or not, is think about what do you want to say. So what's the answer that you want to give, no matter what the question is? What's the main proactive message you want to get across? And secondly, if a difficult question comes up, obviously the difficult question will be different for each of your contexts. How would you respond? Are you going to take a truth sandwich? Are you going to do kind of acknowledge, bridge, and communicate? And if so, how are you going to do that? So those are the two things I think you should prepare to help you with this. And if you would like to come along on the 26th, on Tuesday, the 26th of September, and do this exercise, we'd like you to submit. Oh, sorry, we've got a question already. Jeroen?
Yes, I was wondering because literally this is what's going to happen coming November in the Netherlands because we have elections again. Yeah. And I'm the project leader of a primary education project. So is it also okay if we prepare like the Dutch situation?
Yeah, please do. You can. So what I was going to say is, if you submit to us in enough time, so I think we've said 9 a.m. on the day before, so we've at least had one day to like at least Google the situation. I'm in the Netherlands, so I will know some basic facts about the election. If you just email us who you are, give us some background. I mean, literally just like a sentence, and maybe if you want to link to one news article about what you think the kind of issue that you'd most like to prepare for is, and if that background doesn't explain it already, maybe just give us in one sentence or two what you think the kind of opposition lie or the kind of dilemma would be, so that we can sort of think of a good way to ask that question. Then we will prepare to ask you to interview you on that topic specific to your country.
Yeah, that would be great. Okay, cool. Thank you. And we get the slides, right, as a preparation?
Yeah. So we will email after today. We will email everyone with all of these slides, so you've got all the links and the tips. But if you could email us, so it was Show and Svetlana at ILGA-Europe.org. If you could email us with just those three things, like who you are, what if there's any background that we should know about your situation, if there's 0 elections anywhere in the future in your country and you're not in the EU, so the EU parliamentary elections aren't relevant to, if that's really not relevant to you, then just tell us and we can try and think of some, tell us what you think would be relevant, and we can try and manufacture something. But we've just said, can we go for an election, because it's a bit of a generic common thing amongst all of us. So yeah, who you are, what at least one maximum article of background that we should read, and what you think your opposition dilemma that you'd like to practice is, and then so if you haven't already, you have to still register for the Zoom link with this link, which will also be sent to you. We've got 3 of us as trainers, so we should be able to do breakout rooms and have quite a lot of you there. We'd love as many of you as possible to like send in what your sort of specific situation is, so we can prepare for you to do individual interview practice. But if you're really uncomfortable with doing any kind of interview practice, or you just don't make it in time, it's also okay to turn up and just be part of the audience and to give feedback and just to learn from others. But we'd really challenge you to try and first to see if you can do a practice session, because it's very rare to get a situation where you're going to be practicing amongst an international group of LGBTI activists and media trainers who are all very loving and are going to give you super positive and constructive feedback. And this second session will not be recorded, we promise. So yeah, it's possible to come along and just watch and learn, but we would love it if you did send in your specific scenario. Okay, we've got a couple of minutes left, so if people do have questions, I'd love you to type it into the chat box or raise your hand so we can answer them. While you're thinking of that, I know some people get a bit scared about the technical thing of doing a down the line interview. So there's a really good video about how to make sure your lighting and sound are as good as possible that I'll just play. And if I see some people do need to leave, that's absolutely fine. But if you do want to ask a question, then we can talk about that after this video. So thank you, everybody. If you are someone who does have to leave, hopefully people, and Alexander, don't worry, I've seen that you've got a question. Hopefully people can still see my screen because it's not in the YouTube thing. So, and you can hear this, I think it's only 3 minutes long.
Do you want to make great campaign videos on your smartphone, run professional Zoom training, or even conduct a live media interview straight from your living room? I'm going to show you 6 steps that you can use to make great videos using just your laptop or a smartphone. The right setup for you depends totally on who you are, what your role is, and who your audience is. There's no one right answer. Put really simply, there's a sliding scale from personal to professional. Now, most people want to seem as professional as possible, but the truth is, most viral videos are actually much more personal and authentic. If you want to go professional, then use a static camera, whether that's a phone, a laptop, or a professional camera like this, and keep it at eye level. The #1 sin of videos and video calls is having the laptop down here. So, if you've not done it already, then lift that laptop up on a laptop stand, put it on books, put it on whatever, but make sure it's eye level. Do it now. If you're using a phone, you can use a really cheap tripod like this, or literally just blue tack it to the wall at eye level. A nice backdrop isn't just about looking pretty. On Facebook, you've got 1.7 seconds to grab people in. The backdrop gives really crucial information about who you are and why people should listen to you. This backdrop is really light and airy, but it doesn't convey the gravitas that a politician like Elizabeth Warren might want to have. Some really simple options are books equals big brain, arty objects equals creative, and kit and tools related to what you do reinforce a sense of expertise, which is why I've got all this stuff in the background. The reason your camera might look low quality is because there's not enough light falling on your face. The basic principle is the more light the better, while trying to stop really harsh shadows on one side of your face. You can add more light to your scene by putting yourself by a window, using a lamp, or even buying a special video light. Sound is the most overlooked part when you start making videos, particularly for online training. For your phone, you can improve quality by just using a plug-in lapel microphone or a headset. If you're on a laptop, then getting a desktop microphone like this can totally transform the quality of your sound. And if you're the only person in the world who's not yet started their own podcast, then this is going to help you do that too. To help you get started, we're giving away a free kit list with our top picks.
Okay, so that was that was a lot of tips that are also for creating your own videos at home, which was another skills boost that were in the links that Svetlana shared at the beginning. But as you saw, most of those tips are useful for you doing a live practice interview as well. We're not going to be judging you too harshly on what you look like in the interview. As we said, the message is more important. So definitely don't go out and buy like a shiny new microphone if you don't already have one, but just some of those tips are things that you can do a little bit. I already saw, Alexander, you moving your screen, your camera up as that video is going on. So it's just good to sort of like, the more you look professional, the more you'll feel professional, and therefore you'll hopefully be a bit more confident in delivering your message. Okay, that's enough of it. Questions? Alexander, you got your hands raised?
Yeah, my question is, can people who haven't attended this workshop attend the next one?
Oh, I think so. Yeah. I think if you've got any colleagues or people who weren't able to make it today and they really would like to come along to the practice, then yeah, please send them a link. Obviously, like, it would be great if they could have a little bit of time to skim through the materials today first. And definitely they should send us the detail that we asked for, the sort of background. Right, Svetlana?
Yes, absolutely right. Absolutely right. After this session, basically everyone who is registered will receive presentation with all the links and everything, and a bit later the video recording, and definitely some other people who wasn't here can watch and join the next session. We will be very happy.
And I think, as Svetlana mentioned, if we have loads of people, like so many people that we can't promise to give, even with breakout groups, people personal attention, we might put a bit of a cap on it, or we might say not multiple people from the same organization, because that might be a bit fairer. But I think that's not your problem to worry about. That's our problem in case we get crazy high demand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions? Marion's made a funny point about the potential health and safety risks of using blue tack to stick up a phone. Obviously, like, if people have to go, that's absolutely fine. Thank you so much for participating today. I thought it was really fun. And we'll send all the links out. But if we actually finished right on time. It's past, isn't it? Thank you so much, Svetlana, Anna, and Mehmet as well for running it.
Thank you everyone for joining us, and hope to see you all on September 26th.